In this video, I'm going to be repairing this 2015 12-inch Apple MacBook. Now, I recently got this machine off eBay for only $46, and while in most cases I wouldn't ever consider buying one of these machines, I decided to just go ahead and get this one just because it went for so cheap. And for the most part, it is a complete system, but it does have quite a few issues, which I will show you in just a little bit here when we begin repairing it. Now, this MacBook, the 2015 and pretty much all 12-inch MacBook models, are considered to be some of the worst, if not the worst, laptops that Apple has ever made. And there are many reasons for this, but the main reason is the keyboard that they decided to design and use specifically for this machine. Now, as you might know, this is considered the butterfly keyboard, and it's got like a special key mechanism that allows the keyboard to function with very little key travel in order to fit into this very thin MacBook 12-inch chassis. Now, these keyboards are absolutely horrible. They feel terrible to type on, and the main issue is if any bit of dirt gets into any of these keys, they tend to just stop working, either like physically stop moving or just stop working electrically. And there's a good reason Apple stopped using this keyboard. Like I said, it is an absolutely awful keyboard, and this machine itself is an absolutely awful machine, mainly due to the CPUs used, the failure of that CPU in various cases, and many other problems. But regardless of that, this was very, very cheap. As I said, I got it for $46 off eBay. So in my opinion, with that kind of pricing, it was worth picking up and attempting to repair. Now, if we go ahead and close the system here and open it here, I've already got it taken apart. You can see that it is pretty much fully disassembled already. And the reason for that is it appears that somebody has attempted to install an aftermarket battery. You can see right there. It's not well adhered in, like most of the cells are just kind of flopping in there, not even stuck to the adhesive on the chassis. There is a broken connector on the logic board there for the keyboard and trackpad. You can see it would plug into that cable right there. And in fact, you can see that the bottom battery cell here just popped up. And they've also ripped one of the I-PEX connectors for the Wi-Fi antennas there, and that one screw holding down that bracket is stripped, and I'm unable to remove it as of yet, so I'm not sure if I'm going to end up having to drill that out or if I can manage to get it out with some special tools and techniques. So anyway, the parts I've gotten for this machine are located over here. I just went ahead and got a whole nother bottom case. This was only $15 off eBay, so it was definitely worth picking that up, with a genuine battery and a bunch of other stuff that we needed here. You can see that I've gotten a screw set for the machine here, and I've also gotten a couple of those connectors that are broken for the trackpad and keyboard, as you saw. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to get the logic board out of this machine. I'm going to try to remove that stripped screw, and then we'll take a look at the board and probably begin the process of repairing or replacing that trackpad connector. Alright, so as you can see here, I was able to get that screw removed. I ended up just drilling it out, so there's really no way to put a new screw back in there, but I'm not too worried about that. Another thing I noticed is this component right here, you can see has a little bit of a chip in it, and that was not done by me, of course. That was done by whoever poorly attempted to replace this battery that was in here. But if you look close enough at it, it's actually not damaged to the point of actually causing an issue with the chip. So it is pretty bad there. Of course, I will test it once I put it, back together and see if it actually works. The board itself does work. I have tested that, but I have not fully tested the USB-C port, which I assume that component is for. If there is an issue, I will get and replace that component, but we will see once we get this fully assembled and tested. So with that, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get this connector removed and replaced with one of the new ones that I got. Oh, and then one other thing I noticed is this bottom case does not come with the speaker or antenna assembly as it showed in the listing I actually bought this new bottom case from. So that's a little unfortunate. I will have to reuse this one with the ripped antenna connector, as you can see right here. But of course I will just get another one of these later and replace it once we get everything else done here. So with that, I'm going to get the board on the board preheater and we'll begin the process of replacing this connector. Alright, so you can see here I've got the board on the board preheater here, so we'll go ahead and turn it on, let the board warm up, and then we'll begin the process of removing this connector. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do here is apply some flux to the board. And then we're going to simply take the hot air and heat the connector to remove it. Alright, and that is the connector successfully removed. So of course the next thing we need to do here is take some solder, remove all of the original lead-free solder, and then apply some new leaded solder, so that way soldering the new connector on can be done at a much lower temperature as to not melt it. So first we're just going to apply some fresh solder. Then we're going to wick all the pads with some solder wick. We're going to clean the old flux off the board. Just like so. We'll apply some new flux. And then tin the pads with some fresh solder. Alright, and now that our pads are tinned, we simply need to take our new connector and solder it onto the board. Alright, the connector is pretty well aligned there, so now we'll just heat it and solder it onto the board. Alright, and that looks pretty good right there. So now the last thing I need to do is I actually need to ultrasonic this board, at least this section of the board, simply to remove all of the flux out of this connector, because if you don't, this little tab is going to be difficult to move, and it's also likely not going to make proper contact with the ribbon cable once it's installed. So I'm just going to go ahead and ultrasonic this real quick. It will take a little while to dry off, of course, after that's done. But once everything is ultrasonicked and dried, we will reassemble the system, test it, and see if there's any further repairs that need to be made. Alright, as you can see here, I've gotten the board out of the ultrasonic and it's been drying for a good few hours now in the dehydrator. And you can see that the little retention clip on the connector here is nice and free, which means that all of the flux has been fully removed from this connector. So now that all that's left to do is reinstall its little tiny CPU heatsink here, which is just basically a plate of metal. You can see it goes on the CPU there. I did not remove the thermal paste because this is a special like goopy thermal paste that's designed specifically for this system. And of course I don't really have any extra of this available, so I'm going to leave it as it is. It will rebond without much issue there. And then we'll get the board reinstalled in that new chassis, or I guess the new bottom case, and we'll plug it in, test it, and see what happens. So with that, I'll go ahead and get it assembled and then resume the video. Alright, I've gotten the MacBook mostly reassembled now. I've got the board installed and all the screws in the board. There's only 3 that hold it in. And the only thing I have left off right now are the screws for the bottom cover, as you can see right there. So I've got a USB-C ammeter hooked up to a 87 watt USB-C power adapter. So let's go ahead and plug it in and see if it happens to do anything. Okay, it's plugged in. We got some activity going on here. We got 20 volts, that's good. Okay, let's see if it does this. There's a little LED on in there, you can see right there. The battery is connected, as you can see. So let's see if it will indeed power on here for us. I know these things can be a little finicky sometimes. So I've got nothing out of it yet. That could be that component that's damaged, although I did test this before, as I said, and it did actually power on with no battery connected. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at it real quick, open it up, and I'll let you know if I find anything else that looks like it could be an issue. Alright, so after doing some further testing, I found that unplugging this board, the little headphone jack / audio board here in the corner of the machine, actually got it to power on. So I guess this board has some sort of short on it or something. I'm not really sure, and honestly I don't really care because this board is very cheap and easy to get. So I've gone ahead and gotten a new one, as you can see right here. Gotten one, of course, with the correct space gray color on the jack itself. And I've also gotten a few new parts as well to really finish this machine off. So as you can see here, I've got 2 new speakers with Wi-Fi antenna connections that are actually intact and not ripped off, as you can see there. This is the same board, I just took it out. And then also, if you look at this cable here for the trackpad and keyboard, you can see that it's all mangled up, and it just really doesn't look all that good, and it probably doesn't work. In fact, I know it doesn't work because I tried this when I was testing and it didn't work. So I've gone ahead and also gotten a new one of those as well. So with all those parts now in front of me here, I'm going to go ahead and get them all installed into the chassis, and then we'll put everything back together one more time, give it another test, and see if it fully works then. Alright, so as you can see here, I've gotten the MacBook mostly put back together with all those new components installed. So now let's just go ahead and plug it in once again and see what happens. Looking much better so far. We're pulling about almost 1 amp there, as you can see. So that's a good sign. Oh, and we got the battery charging indicator up there. And it's actually booting and posting. So we'll just go ahead and let it boot up here and see what happens. We're now pulling about 1.3 amps, 1.2, 1.3 amps, as you can see there. It did say the battery was at 0%, so I do expect this to take a little bit of time to boot up here. Alright, and we are at a login screen. So let's see if the trackpad works. The trackpad does work, and it does actually have the name of the previous owner here, so I'm not going to show that. But what I'll do now is I'm going to go ahead and reboot the machine into single user mode and reset the initial macOS setup. We'll set up a new admin account and we'll take a look at the rest of the system. Alright, so as you can see here, I've gotten macOS fully reset here. So let's go ahead and check out about this Mac and see what the specifications are. Alright, so as you can see there, this is a MacBook. This is a 2015 model, of course. You can see it's got the base 1.1 gigahertz dual-core Intel Core M CPU. It's got 8 gigabytes of system memory installed and Intel HD graphics 5300. So let's check the storage here. So there's the NVMe controller there, and you can see that this has the base model 250 gigabyte. I believe that's the base storage configuration on these. 250 gigabyte soldered in, of course, solid state drive. if we go to the memory here, you can see it's, of course, also soldered memory on this machine with its little tiny logic board. But yeah, that has been the total repair of this very cheap MacBook, 12-inch 2015 MacBook that I got off eBay for only $46. I do know it's not a very interesting repair. It was kind of just one connector and just basically reassembly and component replacement from there. But it is still quite nice to have, even though it's one of the worst laptops Apple ever made, one of these 12-inch MacBooks for that kind of cheap price. So maybe in the future I'll do some sort of upgrades to this, like maybe soldered RAM upgrade or maybe soldered storage upgrade, although I don't know if I really want to do that on this particular machine. But anyway, that has been the complete repair of this 12-inch 2015 Apple MacBook. So I hope you enjoyed this video.